While you were checking your bank balance this morning, governments around the world quietly bought more gold than they have in 50 years. And they're not doing it to look pretty. They're doing it because they know something you don't. Your savings account, your retirement fund, the cash you've been putting away for emergencies, it's all about to lose massive value. And the people in charge are making sure they're protected before it happens to you. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly what's happening. Not theory, not speculation, the actual numbers, the countries buying gold by the ton, the timeline of when this affects your wallet, and most importantly, what you need to do in the next 30 days before your purchasing power gets cut in half. Because this isn't coming in 5 years. It's happening right now. And once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Let me start with a number that should make you uncomfortable. In 2024, central banks bought 1,045 tons of gold. That's the third year in a row they've bought over 1,000 tons. To put that in perspective, between 2010 and 2021, central banks averaged 473 tons per year. They've more than doubled their buying. And it's accelerating. In the first quarter of 2025 alone, they bought 244 tons. That's governments using taxpayer money to buy a metal that doesn't pay interest, doesn't generate revenue, just sits in vaults. Why? Because gold does one thing better than anything else. It holds value when currencies collapse. And right now, every government on earth is preparing for currencies to collapse. Let me show you who's buying. Poland led the charge in 2024. They bought 90 tons of gold. Their central bank president, Adam Glapiński, openly said he wants gold to be 20% of Poland's reserves. Why? Because Poland borders Russia and Ukraine. They've seen what happens when geopolitical tensions explode. They've seen currencies become worthless overnight. So they're buying gold as insurance. And they're not alone. China officially bought 331 tons between 2019 and 2024. But here's the thing. That's just what they're reporting. Independent analysts estimate China actually holds between 4,000 and 6,000 tons. They're buying gold and not telling anyone. Why the secrecy? Because if the world knew how much gold China was accumulating, it would signal they're preparing to dump US dollars, and that would crash the dollar before they're ready. India bought gold aggressively in 2024. The Reserve Bank of India added 77 tons. They now hold 876 tons total. Turkey bought gold. Hungary bought gold after not buying any for 3 years. The Czech Republic has been buying gold every single month for 30 months straight. They're trying to reach 100 tons by the end of 2028. These aren't random decisions. This is coordinated behavior. Governments don't coordinate openly, but they all see the same data. They all have the same problem, unpayable debt. And they all know the same solution. Devalue the currency, preserve wealth in gold. Now let me show you what your government isn't buying. They're not buying US Treasury bonds. They're not buying dollars. They're not increasing cash reserves. They're dumping dollars and buying gold. In 2022, when the US and Europe froze Russia's currency reserves, every government in the world learned a terrifying lesson. If your wealth is in dollars or dollar-denominated assets, it can be frozen with a keystroke. It can be sanctioned, it can be seized. But gold is physical. It's in your vault. It's in your country. No one can freeze it. No one can sanction it. You control it completely. And that's why central banks are buying gold at a pace we haven't seen since 1950. Here's what this means for you. When governments buy gold, they're not doing it because gold is going up. They're doing it because they know their currency is going down. Think about it. Why would the US government, which prints dollars, buy gold? Gold doesn't pay interest. It costs money to store. It doesn't fund government operations. The only reason to buy gold is if you think the dollar is going to lose value. And that's exactly what they're preparing for, not in 20 years. Right now, let me show you the mechanism. The US government owes $37 trillion in debt. The annual interest payment on that debt just hit $1.2 trillion. That's more than the defense budget. That's more than Medicare. Just interest, not paying down the debt. Just interest. And interest rates are still elevated. If rates stay at 5%, those interest payments will hit $1.8 trillion by 2027. That's 6% of the entire economy, just to pay interest on money they already borrowed. This is mathematically impossible to sustain. You cannot run a government when 6% of your entire economy goes to debt interest. So what do? They can't raise taxes enough. You can't tax your way out of 132% debt to GDP. They can't cut spending enough. Interest payments alone are bigger than most government programs. There's only one option: devalue the currency. But here's the problem with just printing money. Everyone sees it. Inflation spikes. People panic. Confidence collapses. The dollar crashes. They need a more sophisticated method. They need something that looks legitimate, something that looks like smart policy, something that doesn't look like theft. And that's where gold comes in. Here's how the strategy works. Step 1, accumulate gold quietly. Don't announce it. Don't market buy. Just accumulate through whatever means possible. The US officially holds 8,133 tons of gold. That's valued on government books at $42.22 per ounce, not the current market price of $4,200, not even close, $42.22. That's the official statutory price set in 1973. At that price, US gold reserves are worth $11 billion on paper, but at current market prices of $4,200 per ounce, those same reserves are worth $1.1 trillion. They're holding an asset worth $1.1 trillion and valuing it at $11 billion. Why? Because it gives them room to revalue. Step 2, create a crisis. The debt ceiling fight, a government shutdown, a bond market panic, something that creates urgency, something that justifies extraordinary measures. Because in times of crisis, governments can do things that would be impossible in normal times. The crisis is the excuse. Step 3, revalue gold. The government announces they're returning to a gold-backed dollar. Not a full gold standard, but partial backing. They say the dollar will be backed by a percentage of gold reserves. This sounds conservative. It sounds like sound money. It sounds responsible. But here's what really happens. They announce that for purposes of backing the dollar, gold will be valued at $20,000 per ounce, not the current market price of $4,200, not the book value of $42.22, $20,000 per ounce. What does this do? At $20,000 per ounce, the US gold reserves are suddenly worth $5.2 trillion. They've just created $4.1 trillion in value out of thin air, just by changing the price they use for accounting. And here's the key. Once the US government says gold is worth $20,000, the market follows. Because the US is the largest holder of gold in the world. When the largest holder sets a price, that becomes the floor. The market doesn't hit $20,000 immediately, but it goes to $8,000, then $12,000, then $15,000 over the next 2 years. And while gold is rising to $20,000, what's happening to the dollar? It's collapsing. Because if gold, which was $4,200, is now $20,000, the dollar just lost 79% of its value relative to gold. That's not a market fluctuation. That's currency destruction. And your savings account, your retirement fund, your cash holdings, they just lost 79% of their purchasing power. Let me make this concrete. You have $100,000 in savings right now. You think you're doing okay. Not rich, but comfortable. The government revalues gold to $20,000 per ounce over the next 2 years. Inflation hits 25% annually during that period, not the official CPI number. Real inflation, the inflation you feel at the grocery store. Food prices double, gas prices double, rent goes up 50%. Your $100,000 in savings now buys what $35,000 bought 2 years ago. You didn't spend it. You didn't lose it in the stock market. You didn't get robbed. The government just changed the value of the currency your savings are denominated in, and you lost 65% of your purchasing power. While the government's debt, it's still 37 trillion nominally. But in real terms, adjusted for the inflation they just caused, it's worth 13 trillion. They erased 24 trillion in debt just by devaluing the currency. Now let me show you the evidence this is already in motion. In 2024, Poland's central bank president said openly, "Holding gold is a matter of financial security and stability." That's not economic speak. That's plain language. He's saying we don't trust the global financial system. Hungary's central bank released a statement in September 2024 saying, "Amid increasing uncertainty in the global economy, the role of gold as a safe haven asset and store of value is of particular importance." They're not being subtle. They're telling you they're preparing for currency collapse. The Czech National Bank has bought gold every single month for 30 months. Every month. That's not diversification. That's systematic accumulation based on a plan. And it's not just small countries hedging their bets. China has been buying gold aggressively since 2022. The People's Bank of China reported buying gold for 18 straight months between 2022 and 2024. Then they stopped reporting. Not because they stopped buying, because they don't want you to know how much they're buying. Independent analysis shows China is still accumulating. They're just doing it through state-owned enterprises and off-book transactions. Why? Because China holds over $3 trillion in dollar-denominated assets, US Treasury bonds, dollar reserves, dollar investments. If they announced they were dumping dollars for gold, it would crash the dollar before they could complete the transition. So they're doing it quietly. Buying gold in secret while slowly reducing dollar exposure. This is the pattern. Every country with large dollar holdings is quietly shifting to gold because they all see what's coming. The dollar is going to lose massive value. And when it does, gold will be the only thing that holds purchasing power. Now here's what you're thinking. If this is so obvious, why isn't everyone talking about it? Why isn't this on the news? Because the news is funded by advertisers who benefit from consumer spending. Consumer spending requires confidence in the currency. If people knew the currency was about to collapse, they'd stop spending, they'd hoard, they'd panic, the economy would freeze. So the news doesn't report it, not because it's not true, because reporting it would accelerate the collapse. The government doesn't want you to know until after they've positioned themselves, until after they've accumulated the gold they need, until after the revaluation is ready to execute. By then, it's too late for you to protect yourself. Let me show you the timeline. 2025 is the accumulation phase. Right now. Governments are buying gold quietly. They're not announcing targets. They're not making headlines. They're just accumulating. Poland buying every quarter. China buying off the books. India steadily adding to reserves. This is your window. This is when you should be buying gold too. Because once the crisis hits, the price spikes, and you can't afford it anymore. 2026 will be the crisis phase. Something will break. The debt ceiling fight will escalate. The bond market will show stress. Yields will spike. Maybe a bank fails. Maybe a government shutdown lasts longer than expected. It doesn't matter what the trigger is. What matters is the crisis creates justification for extraordinary measures. In a crisis, the government can do things that would be politically impossible in normal times. They can revalue gold. They can change monetary policy. They can take actions that would normally cause outrage. But in a crisis, people accept it. They're scared. They want the government to do something, anything. And that's when the government executes the plan. 2027 will be the revaluation phase. The government announces a return to gold backing. They say the dollar will be partially backed by gold reserves. They revalue gold to $20,000 per ounce for reserve purposes. The market reprices over the next 12 to 18 months. Gold goes from $4,200 to $8,000, then $12,000, then $16,000. The dollar collapses. Inflation explodes, not 10% annually. 30%, maybe 40% in the first year. Grocery prices triple. Gas hits $10 per gallon. Rent goes up 60%. Your wages don't keep up. They never do. Real wages fall 40%. Living standards collapse. But the government survives. Their debt gets erased in real terms. Mission accomplished. 2028 to 2030 is the stabilization phase. The new prices settle. Gold stabilizes around $15,000 to $18,000. The dollar stabilizes at its new lower value. Inflation drops back to 8 to 10% annually. Still high by historical standards, but better than the crisis peak. The economy adjusts to the new reality. Those who held gold preserved their wealth. Those who held dollars lost 70%. The wealth gap explodes. The middle class shrinks. And the government says, "We did what was necessary to preserve financial stability." They'll call it success. You'll call it theft. But by then, it's over. Now let me show you what you need to do. And you need to do this now, not later. Now. Because once the crisis hits, it's too late. Gold prices spike. Dealers run out of inventory. Premiums go up 30 to 40%. You end up paying $6,000 for an ounce of gold that was $4,200 a few months ago. By the time you realize you need it, you can't afford it. Step 1. Buy physical gold. Not gold ETFs. Not gold mining stocks. Not paper gold. Physical gold that you hold. Gold coins. Gold bars. Stored securely, either in a safe in your home or in a private vault. Not a bank safe deposit box. Banks can freeze access during a crisis. You need gold you can physically touch. Start with 1 ounce minimum. If you can afford more, buy more. Target 10 to 20% of your net worth in gold. If you have $100,000 in savings, put $10,000 to $20,000 in gold. If you have $500,000, put $50,000 to $100,000 in gold. This is insurance. You're not trying to get rich from gold. You're trying to not get poor from dollar collapse. Step 2. Minimize cash holdings. Cash is death in a currency collapse. Every dollar you hold loses value. Keep only what you need for 3 months of expenses. Pay your bills, cover emergencies, but nothing more. Everything else should be in hard assets. Gold, real estate, productive investments. Not sitting in a checking account losing 30% per year to inflation. Step 3. Get out of bonds. Government bonds, corporate bonds, any bond denominated in dollars is a trap. You're lending money that will be repaid in devalued currency. If you have bonds in your retirement account, sell them now. Move the money to other assets. Stocks in companies with real assets. Real estate funds. Commodities. Anything but bonds. Because when the dollar collapses, bondholders get destroyed. You'll be repaid your $100,000. But that $100,000 will buy what $30,000 buys today. Step 4. Buy assets that inflate with the currency. Real estate, not vacation homes, not speculative flips. Productive real estate. Rental properties in strong markets. Farmland. Commercial property. Real estate holds value because it's physical. It's land. It's buildings. When the currency collapses, real estate prices go up in nominal terms. Your mortgage payment stays the same, but your rent income doubles. You win. Commodities, energy, agriculture, industrial metals. These are physical goods the world needs. When currency collapses, commodity prices explode. Companies with hard assets, companies that own mines, energy infrastructure, farmland. Their assets hold value when currencies don't. Step 5. Reduce debt. This sounds counterintuitive. If the dollar is collapsing, shouldn't debt be good? You repay with cheaper dollars. In theory, yes. In practice, no. Here's why. Your debt is in dollars, but your income is also in dollars. When the dollar collapses, your wages don't keep up with inflation. You're earning fewer real dollars. So even though you're repaying debt with cheaper dollars, you can't afford the payments. The math works for governments because they print money. It doesn't work for you because you have to earn money, pay off high-interest debt, credit cards, personal loans, car loans. Get rid of it. Mortgage debt is different. If you have a fixed-rate mortgage at 3 or 4%, keep it. That debt will inflate away. Your payment stays the same while inflation doubles prices. That works in your favor. But if you have an adjustable rate mortgage or high fixed rate, pay it off or refinance. Now let me show you who wins and who loses in this scenario, because understanding this will make you angry. But you need to know. The winners are obvious. Governments. They erase 24 trillion in real debt burden without defaulting. They survive. Politicians. They avoid the political pain of spending cuts or tax increases. They get re-elected. The wealthy, people with assets, real estate, stocks, businesses. Those assets inflate in nominal terms. A house worth 500,000 becomes worth 1.2 million. Not because it's better, because the dollars are worth less. The wealthy preserve purchasing power through assets. Early gold buyers. If you bought gold at $2,000 and it goes to $20,000, you 10x your money. You preserved purchasing power and gained wealth. Foreign governments with gold. China, Russia, India. Their gold gets revalued too. They erase their debts using the same mechanism. The losers are the people who make the system work, the middle class, people with savings in dollars. You worked your whole life, saved $200,000 for retirement. That money loses 70% of its value in 3 years. Your retirement is gone. Retirees on fixed incomes. Social Security pays $2,000 per month. That's fixed. But prices double. Your $2,000 now buys what $1,000 bought before. You can't survive. Bondholders. Anyone holding treasury bonds, corporate bonds. You get repaid in devalued dollars. You lose 70% in real terms. Pension funds. They hold billions in government bonds. Those bonds become worthless. Pensions collapse. Workers. Wages lag inflation, always. If inflation is 30%, your raise is 8%. You lost 22% in real wages. Your living standard collapsed. Renters. Landlords raise rents to match inflation. But your wages don't match inflation. You get priced out. Homelessness spikes. Small businesses. They can't raise prices fast enough to cover rising costs. Margins collapse. They fail. The American dream, it dies. Because the currency that denominated that dream is destroyed. This is not speculation. This is the mathematical outcome of the policy. And it's not unique to America. This has happened before, multiple times, throughout history. Let me show you the pattern. Weimar Germany, 1920s. The government couldn't pay war reparations, so they printed money. The mark collapsed. A loaf of bread cost billions of marks. People needed wheelbarrows of cash to buy groceries. But the government's debt erased. Argentina, multiple times. 1980s, 1990s, 2000s. The government couldn't pay debt, so they devalued the peso. Savings evaporated, but debt disappeared. Zimbabwe, 2000s. The government printed money to cover deficits. The Zimbabwe dollar became worthless. They issued $100 trillion bills. Literally. But government debt, gone. Venezuela, 2010s. The government printed bolivars. Hyperinflation destroyed the economy. People fled the country by the millions. But government debt burden eliminated. The pattern is universal. Government gets over-indebted. Government can't pay through normal means. Government devalues currency. Savers lose everything. Government survives. And the United States is following the exact same playbook. They're just using more sophisticated language. They're not calling it money printing. They're calling it strategic reserve management. They're not calling it currency debasement. They're calling it monetary modernization. They're not calling it theft. They're calling it necessary policy to ensure financial stability. But the outcome is identical. You lose. They win. Now here's the part that should make you act immediately. This isn't a future threat. This is happening right now. The policies are in motion. The timeline is visible. The only question is whether you position yourself before it executes or whether you get caught holding dollars when they collapse. Let me show you the final pieces of evidence. In November 2024, the World Gold Council released data showing central banks bought more gold in the first 3 quarters of 2024 than any period since 1950. That's not diversification, that's preparation. In January 2025, multiple analysts published reports showing that central bank gold buying remains at record highs, despite gold prices being at all-time highs. Think about that. Gold is at $4,200 per ounce, the highest price ever. And central banks are still buying aggressively. That means they're not buying because gold is cheap. They're buying because they know their currencies are about to get much cheaper. In March 2025, Poland's central bank announced they now hold 497 tons of gold, which is 21% of their reserves. They hit their target, and they're not stopping. In April 2025, Hungary announced they increased gold reserves from 94 tons to 110 tons, their first purchase in 3 years. Why now? Because they see what's coming. These are not coincidences. This is coordinated behavior driven by the same analysis. Every government sees the debt numbers. Every government knows the math doesn't work. Every government is preparing for the inevitable outcome. And here's the final piece. The average person has no idea this is happening. Go ask 10 people on the street if they know central banks are buying record amounts of gold. 9 of them won't know. 1 might have heard something, but doesn't understand why it matters. That's intentional. The system works when people have confidence, when people trust the currency, when people keep working, spending, saving in dollars. If everyone knew the dollar was about to collapse, they'd panic. They'd withdraw money from banks. They'd buy gold. They'd hoard food. The system would freeze. So the information stays quiet, reported in financial news that most people don't read, discussed in central bank meetings that aren't publicized, visible to those who look, but invisible to those who don't. And by the time the average person realizes what's happening, it's too late. The crisis hit. Gold spiked to $8,000 per ounce. Dealers are out of stock. Premiums are 40%. You can't protect yourself anymore. You're stuck holding dollars that are losing value every single day. That's why you need to act now, not next month. Not when you have more time to research, now, because the accumulation phase is ending. We're moving into the crisis phase, and once the crisis starts, your window closes. Here's your action plan. Week 1. Open a precious metals account. Dealers like APMEX, JM Bullion, SD Bullion. Create an account. Verify your identity. Get ready to buy. Research what to buy. Gold American Eagles, gold Canadian maple leafs, gold bars from reputable mints. Avoid rare coins. Avoid numismatic premium. You want gold for its metal content, not its collectability. Buy your first ounce. Start small if you need to. 1 ounce. Get comfortable with the process. Then scale up. Week 2. Evaluate your cash holdings. How much do you have in checking and savings accounts? Reduce it to 3 months of expenses. If you spend $5,000 per month, keep $15,000 cash. Move the rest. Week 3. Evaluate your bonds. Do you have bonds in your 401k or IRA? Look at your allocations. Sell long-term government bonds. Sell corporate bonds unless they're very short duration. Move the money to stock funds focused on companies with hard assets, energy companies, mining companies, agricultural companies. Week 4. Make your major gold purchase. Based on your net worth, calculate 10 to 20% allocation to gold. If you have $200,000 in assets, that's $20,000 to $40,000 in gold. Make the purchase. Take delivery. Store it securely. Month 2. Diversify internationally. Research foreign bank accounts, Swiss banks, Singapore banks, banks in countries with low debt and sound monetary policy. Open an account. It's legal. It's smart. It's protection against dollar collapse. Consider foreign real estate. Property in countries that aren't destroying their currency, not vacation property, investment property, rental income in foreign currency. Month 3. Build skills and community. What skills do you have that create value regardless of currency? Trades, medical knowledge, agricultural skills, repair skills. Invest in developing those skills. Connect with people in your area. Community matters when systems break down. People who have resources, land, tools, knowledge. Build those relationships before you need them. This sounds extreme, but history shows currency collapse creates social instability. Having skills and community is insurance. It costs nothing except time, and it could save your life if things get worse than expected. Now let me address the objection. You're thinking this sounds like paranoia, like conspiracy, like doomsday prep. Let me show you why it's not. The US debt to GDP ratio is 132%. This is public data. The interest payment is $1.2 trillion annually. This is public data. The government cannot pay this through normal means. This is mathematical fact. Devaluation is the only option. This is historical precedent. And central banks are buying gold at record rates. This is current news. Everything I've shown you is documented, verifiable, public information. The only conspiracy is how few people are paying attention. The wealthy are paying attention. The hedge funds are positioned. The central banks are positioned. The governments are positioned. The only people not positioned are regular people who trust the system, who believe the government will protect them, who think their savings are safe because they're in a bank. Those people are going to lose everything, not because they did anything wrong, because they trusted a system that's designed to sacrifice them when necessary. And that's what's happening right now. So here's your choice. You can dismiss this as fear-mongering. You can assume it won't happen. You can keep your money in dollars and bonds and cash. And when the revaluation happens, when gold hits $20,000 per ounce, when your dollars lose 70% of their value, you'll realize I was right. But by then, it's too late. Or you can act now. You can buy gold while it's $4,200. You can position yourself before the crisis. You can be on the winning side of the wealth transfer instead of the losing side. Those are your only two options, and you need to choose in the next 30 days. Because the window is closing, the governments are stockpiling gold. They're preparing for currency collapse. They're protecting themselves at your expense. The only question is whether you're going to protect yourself too, or whether you're going to be collateral damage in the greatest wealth transfer in human history. The choice is yours, but you need to make it now, while you still can.